Hello everyone. So it has been like 2 months almost since I posted a video, and just a lot of crazy stuff has happened, like a lot of crazy stuff. And one thing that happened has been kind of lingering on my mind quite a lot. It's just been kind of occupying a lot of my thoughts because I'm still trying to figure out just what the hell happened. And I thought it would be interesting to make a video about it. But I didn't want this to be, I really hesitated on it because I didn't want, like, my last video was kind of a someone done me wrong video, and I don't want to make another someone done me wrong video because I don't want this to be a someone done me wrong kind of channel. But, you know, this happened and it's interesting. And the reason it's interesting, I think, number one, the fact that it happened in the first place, and I have so many questions and so many unanswered, like, what was this? But also, like, one of the things that I find myself working on a lot as a writer, when I'm writing stories, when I'm working on novels, is the nature of evil. I try really hard to avoid like just mustache twirling villains. I want them to have a personality. Even if I don't go too deeply into the personality of the antagonistic person, I try to have a clear idea of what they're like in my head so that when I write them, they're not just this blank slate mustache twirling villain. And I think that can be hard to do because then you have to take the time to understand how malice can be reasonable. And that's fascinating, but it's not always easy. And I saw a doozy just over these last couple months. I saw something that I was like, wow, you know. And is this going to end up in a novel? Possibly, because it was so interesting. Like, why wouldn't it? It was just a very unique kind of experience that I had with this other person. Now, I have a rule when it comes to novel writing. I have a friend who has led a very interesting life. Like, I would be happy to like just sit down and look at this person and be like, tell me everything about your life. Tell me your story. Tell me the whole thing. Like, I could happily write this person's memoir. They've led a very interesting life. But one day this person, he was like, hey, you're not going to put me in one of your novels, are you? I was like, no, that would be, it just feels like it would be a breach of trust. You know, this person is trusting me with this story. I'm not going to write it into anything without his express permission. You know, I've heard stories about like people who are novelists and like other people pick up their novel and go, hey, wait a minute, this is a conversation we had. You wrote me into your novel. And then the novelist will be like, no. And it's like, it's everything about me. Like, this person looks exactly like me. They even wear the same glasses. I always thought that sort of thing was really tacky. Like, you write characters who are realistic, but you take little pieces from everything you've experienced to build a character. They have to be kind of complete people on their own. They can't just be copied and pasted from the world you've experienced. But every once in a while I meet someone that I draw from heavily. And usually they're people that I don't like and I don't respect. And this person has lost any respect I ever had for her, so I don't feel bad if I stick her in a novel. It's going to be like, yeah, I totally copied and pasted this one from real life because I was just like, whoa. Oh, hey, baby. Anyway, before I get too much into the story of how all this stuff happened over the last month, do you like science fiction? I wrote a book. It is available on Amazon. There's a link in the description. You can get it on you can get it on Kindle Unlimited. You can get it on Kindle, and you can also get it in paperback if you prefer reading physical copies of a book. I just recently got my first review, and I'm very excited about that. I think it's a really good review, and I think it's a very accurate review, so I was really excited to see it. And if you've read it and you want to post a review, that would really help me out. I know that the algorithm on Amazon really runs off of reviews, so that would be cool. To everyone who has purchased a copy, thank you so much. I've been getting some feedback from some of you, and it's all been really positive so far, so thank you very much. And yeah, if you're interested in science fiction, check it out. So anyway, this thing that happened, and just evil in general, it's very hard to write evil in a way that makes sense. It's really easy to write just, I'm evil, ha ha ha. Writing evil in a way that evil actually makes sense is difficult. You doing okay? I'm still trying to understand this person's motivations because I think it's fascinating. I think what happened is fascinating, and I got upset for a while because all this stuff happened. It was really upsetting stuff. But now that I'm just looking back on it, it's like, this was really fascinating. Like, this is a very interesting kind of experience. So let me start you off with some background information. My family, we live in a small house. Now, I love this house. I remember when we bought it, like, the first time I saw it, I was like, this is so beautiful. It's small. It's like a little teacup house, but it's so pretty. And I just love it so much. And it's out in the woods, and it's really beautiful, and there's trees everywhere. I'll wake up in the morning, and I'll go outside, and I will listen to the birds singing as the sun rises, and you can hear it echoing throughout the trees, and it's just so beautiful. In our backyard, sometimes we'll have deer or bunny rabbits or any number, wild turkeys, like all sorts of different creatures just living out there. And it's so beautiful. We have cardinals, we have blue jays. I like it here, but it is quite small. Now, when we first moved into this house, that wasn't a problem. It was me, my husband, and our 2 oldest children. But then we, proceeded to have 3 more children. So now there's 7 of us, and it is a very small house, which is why this room with these colors, my son loves orange and blue. And so I had this room all painted orange and blue, but we moved my sons into a bigger bedroom, and we took the smaller bedroom so that they would have more space, because space is becoming more and more of an issue. And we've been talking about ways to handle that, either moving to a bigger house, which we kind of don't want to do because that might mean moving to the city and not being in these lovely woods, or possibly just having this house expanded. And we've been discussing ways to get that to happen, which might be easier. And then we wouldn't have to leave the woods. So that would be very good. Adding on a couple bedrooms could be a good thing. But until then, it's a very small old house. And I mean, it was used as a rental property for most of its lifetime before we got a hold of it. So it's been well cared for, but not lovingly cared for. And it's got some dings and scratches on it. We've been fixing it up since we moved in. So that's our house. It's nothing spectacularly impressive, but we like it. More specifically, I like it. Now, another important bit of background is the town we live in. We live in a small rural town. Now, it used to be more rural when we moved in here. It was really rural, but the housing market has done what it's done, and this is a nice area, so a lot of people have been moving in. It's actually been getting kind of crowded in this town, and I was talking to some of the people who grew up here, and they were like, yeah, it's too crowded for us. We're actually thinking about moving farther out, where it's more quiet. But it's still a very kind of country town, and it's just peaceful. It's very sleepy, very pleasant. It's a great place to raise kids. A little way down the road, there's another town, and this town is full of very wealthy people. Not everybody who lives there is ridiculously wealthy, but if you go on Zillow, because I just went on Zillow I think last week I went on Zillow, and I found a $3 million house over there, and that's not uncommon. There are a lot of just palaces in that area. It's a very, very, very wealthy area, and it's known for being a very wealthy area. So that should be most of the background information, I think. Now, our kids, we send them to a private school because my husband heard all my stories about my experiences in public school, and he was like, yeah, I'm not sending any of my children to that. I don't think most kids nearly get killed by their teachers in public school, but, I did. So my husband has been working very hard to send our children to private school. And so we live a very simple life in our small house. And a lot of the money that we earn goes into our children's education at this private school. Now, understandably, private school is expensive. So many of the students attending this private school are from the very wealthy town near ours. And that only makes sense. And some of those people are awesome people. Like, I've never been the kind of person who, links up moral judgments with monetary wealth. There's some really awesome poor people in this world, and there's some really shitty wealthy people in this world, but I've seen people flip it around and be like, oh, well, wealthy people are horrible, and poor people are just innocent, hardworking, honest, good, whatever. And I've seen some horrible poor people, and I've seen some really, really awesome rich people. However much money you have, it doesn't dictate whether or not you're a good person. It doesn't have anything to do with it. So it always confuses me when people take those two things and hook them up together in their minds. I'm just looking at that doesn't make sense to me. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. My kids have friends at this school who are just wonderful people. I've met their parents. The parents are wonderful people. Please don't get into that. Please don't get into that. He's getting into that. Birthday parties can get a little awkward because I'll show up at, the address that they're having the party at, and it's this literal mansion. And that can get a bit intimidating, but I'm getting used to it. People are people. The people who live in the mansion are either going to be nice people or they're going to be not very nice people. And that's the same as the people who live in the little teeny house in the woods, little teeny house in the woods. People are people. So anyway, I'm in the car line to pick up my kids from school, and there's another mom there. And the two of us start talking because, it can get a little cliquish at the school. There's some social climbers there, and they don't necessarily want to have anything to do with me because I'm about as common or garden as a human can get. I'm very plain. How do you say it? I do not have the mark of wealth upon me, and I don't think I ever will. That's who I am. That's how I am. That's my life. And there's a lot of people there who just don't want to have to waste their time with someone who's not, steeped in affluence, I guess you could say. Anyway, I met another mom in the car line. The two of us started talking, and she seemed friendly. And I was like, okay, cool, it's good to have another mom who's friendly. I started to feel very socially inept after being kind of just quietly ignored by all the wealthy moms who just don't want to be bothered with someone as blue-collared as I am. And I mean, I didn't hide the fact that I worked at a Walmart, unloading trucks, and I liked the work, which is even worse. Like, how dare I enjoy something so, common? And not all the moms are like that. There are some of them who are just absolute sweethearts, like some of the nicest people I've ever met, and, it's a mixed bag, So anyway, this one mom, I invited her over to my house a lot. We spent a lot of time together. We would talk on the phone for hours. Like, time passed and we got really close. And afterwards, I look at my husband and I'm like, okay, is there something wrong with me? Am I just bad at relationships? Because I'm picking them. Like, lately I've just been picking them. I had the issue with my coworker when I was working at the Walmart. He tried to get me fired twice because I wouldn't have sex with him. And now there's this issue with this lady. What am I doing wrong? Is there something that I'm just doing wrong here? And he looks at me, he's like, yeah, I knew she was trouble right away. I was like, why didn't you tell me? I used to hang out with murderers. I have no warning bell system inside my head. I need outside observation for these things. Clearly I am not good at this. Yeah, if my husband ever meets any of my friends and gets a weird vibe off of them, from now on I've asked him to tell me because, don't just expect me to figure it out. I mean, I literally hung out with murderers. So this lady, I could tell she was very wealthy, very affluent the moment I met her. And I didn't know if I was just like, it kind of clues me in about how people must see me when I looked at her and I could tell right away that she was wealthy, like very wealthy, because I'm sure having that insight, like, oh wow, I can tell the moment I saw this person that she's been wealthy her entire life. People must look at me and I wonder what they see. Because I mean, I don't care. Like, I just don't care. I don't care about appearances. I don't care about social status. I don't care. And because I don't care, I don't act like I care. And so God only knows what kind of vibes I'm putting out into the universe for other people to pick up on. But this gal, obviously very wealthy. And she tells me that she's just moved here from California, so she doesn't know anybody. And I'm like, okay, that's why you're talking to me. Got it, okay. But she's nice, so we talk. I mean, why not, You hang out with the people that you end up hanging out with, and maybe she'll make friends with some of the other richer, more status-heavy moms later, and, decide she doesn't want to talk to me anymore, and quite frankly, I don't give a shit, so, yeah. And so we end up hanging out a bunch. And she tells me about her life in little bits and pieces. She's not very open about her history. which is something that my husband found immediately rather alarming. And I looked at it and it was like, that kind of makes sense. She told me she was in the middle of a rough divorce. Originally, she implied very heavily that this was her first husband. And so I assumed she had only ever been married once. And she talks about how she's going through this rough divorce. Her husband is a narcissist. It's really bad. And so I'm like, okay, if you don't want to talk about it, I'm going to give you some space. That makes sense. She tells me about how her mom's a narcissist. And I look at it and it's like, okay, that's something I've seen before. Like, there's two different things that happen when someone tells you that people in their life are narcissists. Either one, they actually have people in their lives who are narcissists, and I've seen that. Like, if you've got a parent who's a narcissist, and you grow up thinking that's what love is, then you're going to repeat that pattern in future relationships. So if you have a narcissistic mother, it is entirely possible you will end up with a narcissistic husband. That's very realistic. The other thing that happens is you're playing the victim. My mother was a narcissist. I'm so abused. My husband was a narcissist. I'm so abused. Pity me. I'm so abused. I looked at it and thought, she seems like a nice enough person, and she doesn't want to talk about her history because clearly there's some things going on there. I'll just let her have some space. And so I didn't get too alarmed when she told me that her mom was a narcissist and her husband was a narcissist, and later that her sister was a narcissist and also her father was a narcissist. And it's like, well, this is still technically in the realm of possibility. So it was a small red flag, but it was only one red flag, and it could have been perfectly innocent. So I was just like, okay. She was always talking about God. Always. That was the thing that always put me on edge, because growing up where I did, around the people that I did, the people who were like really, really always talking about. And I mean, I'm a Wiccan. I practice Wicca. You can say what you will about Wicca. Wicca has some real nutcases in it, but that's the religion I chose because I couldn't be a Christian anymore after the way I grew up. I saw way too many people who were superficially religious and really, really horrible people under the surface. It was kind of a thing where I grew up where people would just act like awful. They would do horrible things, and then they'd be like, oh God, Jesus, close personal relationship with Jesus, and I'd just be sitting there like, you are a terrible human being and you do terrible things, and then you preach at me. I had a lot of issues with people who just God this, God that, and it's not everybody who's spiritual, because I know some really, really awesome Christians in my life. Like, it's not just a specifically Christian thing, because I know wonderful, wonderful Christians, but there's this certain like fairy tale Peter Pan, God is my best friend, close personal relationship with God, God's gonna solve all my problems, God's gonna take care of me. Growing up where I did, like, there were a lot of people who said that you shouldn't make decisions for yourself. You should just trust God with everything. And I mean, literally they would talk about what kind of clothes to wear in the morning, how God should make that decision and not you. Like, people were kind of crazy. And so, this lady had that kind of attitude about God, where it was like, oh, God will take care of me. I don't have to do anything because God's just going to step right in and take care of me. And I can't live with that belief system at all. Not after the way I grew up, not after all the times I had to fight for my life and keep myself alive. And I can't, because my belief system is that God gives you tools. God gives you a brain. God gives you willpower. God gives you strength. God gives you all the tools you need to do the job, and then God steps back. And you have to do the job. You have all the tools that were given to you, and that's from God. But you have to do the job. And that was my experience, I had to keep myself alive. I probably should be dead right now. And the only reason I'm alive is because I had a lot of willpower and I had a lot of strength. And yes, God gave me that willpower and God gave me that strength to keep myself alive. But at the end of the day, I was the one who did it. I was the one who stayed alive. I was the one who fought for my life. And I take credit for that. I don't understand this whole fluffy, God's just going to step in and do everything for me so I don't have to go through hard stuff. I went through hard stuff. That was the beginning of my life. The beginning of my life was just hard stuff. I can't just trust that God is going to go and make everything okay. I had to make everything okay. I had to do that work. God was not going to step in and just take the hard stuff away from me. And if I had been waiting around for God to just come and save me like that, dude, I'd be dead. So I very much struggle with that. And it makes me uncomfortable when people talk a certain way about God. And she was one of the people who talked that way about God all the time. And I noticed a pattern where not only was she just talking about God randomly, but she would also, if I ever talked about anything that was a little bit too over her head, she'd switch topics really quickly over to God and how great God was and how we should just need to trust in God and God's going to make everything good and, just the whole thing. And I realized that she was kind of using that as a crutch for the fact that I had said something that she couldn't understand. And so I was like, okay, when I'm around people and I start to get to know people and I start to relax around people, you're okay. Please ignore the crying baby. He is okay. Anyway, when I'm around people and I've spent a lot of time with people and I start to relax around people, sometimes I start to talk about, sometimes I let a little bit of myself kind of just come out of the shell, and that's not always a good thing. And I mean, sometimes it works out really well. Sometimes I just kind of start letting me out and people like that person. But frequently I have to keep it hidden under the surface for a reason. It's not always something that people can really relate to. When I started talking with her about stuff that was like on my mind, stuff that I was thinking about instead of like, because I've got two streams in my head. There's always the stuff that I'm thinking about, and then there's the stuff that I'm kind of pre-processing so that when I talk about it, it's okay, which is a lot of work, and I'm pretty sure other people do it better than I do, but I'm not the most socially gifted of people. So I noticed that whenever I started letting the little bits of whatever was in my head kind of slip through, it would shoot over her head. Like it would go over her head and then she'd get confused, and immediately when she got confused, she'd switch over to, well, we need to trust in God. God's going to take care of us. God's so wonderful, and God's going to take care of us, so we just have to have lots of faith in God. And I'd look at it as like, okay, this is her way of telling me that she didn't understand what I said and I need to dial it back. So, we got along okay, and she was really sweet. She would like bring candy for my kids, and she'd come and help me out with some things around the house. And I mean, she was just being a real sweet person. So I was like, okay, you're probably just a really nice person. You say that you've had some narcissistic people in your life. I have known people who've been the victim of narcissistic abuse, and they can be just really, really sweethearted people, but they're very quiet, and they're very low key, and they're very peaceful, and they don't want to cause any kind of conflict because conflict is scary. So I just looked at it as like, she might be one of those people. So I'm just going to be, really gentle with this person because I don't know what she's been through. One last thing you need to know about her. She thought there was a number to call for everything. Anytime there was any kind of a problem or issue. I remember at one point I had some furniture I was trying to get rid of, and she's like, oh, just call, I think it was 999. And I was like, I don't think that works here. And she's from California. She's like, oh no, you can just call that number. They'll come take your garbage away for you. I was like, that might have worked in California, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't work here. She kept insisting that I call 999. I kept telling her, that doesn't work here. Like, this isn't California. You can't just call this number and have them take your trash for you. She kept insisting. So finally I looked up the number. I was like, I'm not calling this number. This is a police hotline. I am not calling this number to ask them to take my garbage away. She insisted. Finally, just to get her off my back, I called the number like, hey, do you guys do trash removal? They're like, no. I was like, I didn't think so. Okay, thank you. That was awkward, but whatever. She thought there was a number for everything, and it kind of makes sense because she has been fantastically, ridiculously wealthy her entire life. Now, she didn't talk about this until after she'd gotten to know me pretty well, which is understandable because I'm sure that if you are fantastically wealthy, there are people who want to take advantage of that. I don't give a shit. I don't need your money. If you're fantastically wealthy and you're a friend of mine, I don't want your money. You're just there to hang out, and I'm just here to hang out. There will be no exchanging of money. I'm not that kind of person. Meet me in a strip club, that's a different story. I'm going to take as much money out of you as I can, but if you meet me just on the street, I'm not trying to take people's money. So I didn't care that she had money her entire life, but her entire life she has had money. And so I'm sure that's kind of affected her understanding of how the world works, in the sense that for her, there's always a number you can call. If you have any kind of problem whatsoever, just call the appropriate number and the problem goes away. And so she wanted me to call this number that worked for her in California, so it's going to work for me over here in a very different state than California, but that's totally going to work. And she just could not wrap her head around the fact that you're not in California anymore. You can't just call people to come take care of everything for you because the government takes care of everything for you. You can't do that. I'm trying to think, is there anything else, any other key details that I'm leaving out? And I think that's mostly it. The God stuff definitely put me on edge, but I was like, okay, this is a perfect opportunity for me to be open-minded to somebody who's got, different cultural beliefs, different religious beliefs than I do. This is good practice for me. And so this one day she texted me. She said that she thought that her neighbors might be criminals. And I looked at it, was like, this is one of those situations where I think you're bored. He is okay, by the way. He's just upset that I'm not holding him. He's safe. He's just upset. She texted me and said that she was worried about her next door neighbors. She thought they might be criminals because, according to her, and she said this was very hush-hush, she didn't want anybody to know, but she had a friend of hers in the police department run their license plates, which I don't think is very legal, but I could be wrong. Anyway, she ran their license plates, and their license plates don't match up with their names, so she thinks they might be felons who are hiding from the law. And I'm looking at it like, well, maybe the license plates are in their parents' names. Maybe it's their parents' car. Or maybe they just bought those cars and the names haven't transferred over. Or, there's other things that could be going on. But she was pretty insistent that they were felons. And I looked at it and was like, okay, that's some... I don't have time to be bothered with your weird issues with your neighbors. Like, I'm living my life. Like, I have so much on my plate. Other people's business is other people's business. I just can't make myself care. Sorry. And so I went about my day. I didn't really think too much about it. A couple days later, she's like, there is a police raid going on in my house. I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of crazy. She's like, yeah, they're interviewing everyone in the apartment complex. They did a raid in my neighbor's apartment. I was like, wow, that's insane. So, I'm sitting there thinking maybe they are criminals. And so I asked her, like, later on, like, what happened, You interviewed the police. How'd that go? What happened? She's like, we're not supposed to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. It's just too upsetting. Now, that's a big red flag. So first, you think your neighbors are criminals, and then the next thing I know, your neighbors are getting their house raided by the cops. Did you call the cops on your neighbors? Like, did you get bored sitting in your apartment with nothing to do and call the cops on your next door neighbors? Like, she lives in the wealthy town. That town is full of really, really wealthy people. Wealthy people are not violent criminals hiding from the law. Like, violent criminals hiding from the law typically don't go to wealthy towns and rent wealthy apartments in wealthy neighborhoods. That doesn't happen. I've known criminals. They don't do that. Yeah, I thought that was a little bit not so good. I was looking at that like, that's pretty suspicious there, honey. That's not good. That's not looking good. But I didn't have too much time to think about it because a couple days later, there was a knock on the door. I'm like cleaning the house and doing laundry, and there's a knock on the door. I go to answer the door, and it's DCS. And I'm sitting there like, okay, do you have the wrong address? Like, are you at the wrong location? Please tell me you're at the wrong location. Nope. They had a what was it? A complaint filed against us for unsafe living conditions or hazardous living conditions or something like that. Basically, someone had called them and told that our house was crusted over with cat feces and crawling with rats and filth. And I'm sitting there looking at her like, she's telling me all this stuff like, oh yeah, cat feces, rats, filth crusted all over the walls. And I just kind of looked at her, I was like, come on in, I'm doing laundry, it's really messy. And sure enough, I've got like laundry all over the table where I've been folding it. And I was just like, come on in, you got to take a look at my house. You might as well take a look at my house. And so she walks in, you go through the front door and immediately you end up in the kitchen. She walks in, looks around the kitchen, looks at me. Does someone have a grudge against you? Like, are you in the middle of some beef with someone? And I looked at her like, I understand that I'm an unpleasant person sometimes, but I didn't think anybody was that pissed off at me. I didn't have any clue what the hell was going on. Like, I didn't know why anyone would say there was cat poop crusted all over my floor when you can very clearly see if you look down at my floor, there is no cat poop. Like, just look down. It's obviously not cat poop all over the floor. I'm telling you guys, DCS got called on me. I got a baby crying in the background. This is lovely. He's upset. Nap time's happened. He's going to be okay. He is a very loved baby, but he is not welcome to 24/7 attention. Like, eventually he has to spend some time not being held. Anyway, she looks around. She checks up on all the kids. Now, DCS, when someone's filed a report, they have to do a bunch of stuff. So they have to give you 2 visits, and they also have to talk with one of your friends, and you have like a personal reference kind of thing. So that meant we had to call up one of our friends like, hey, someone called DCS on us, so could you please give us a character reference? Like, this is real bullshit, but they require this, so we have to do it. It's not fun, having that happen to you. It's just not fun. And I'm sitting there like, okay, who did this? Like, it was clearly someone for the school. Like, we figured that out because they were like, well, yeah, they said that it was somebody who was attending the school. So it's like, okay, it's someone from the school. They know that we have cats. I'm narrowing it down. And there is only one person that I talk to about rats. Only one person out of everybody that I know. We have a chicken coop. We have chickens. They're just right over that way. We have chickens. One of the problems with owning chickens is rats. Because the rats will come into your chicken coop and they will eat the grain that you're feeding the chickens. This is a big problem for anybody who owns chickens. And I had originally built the chicken coop with this metal skirting around the chicken coop to prevent rat infestation. And unfortunately for me, the rats had burrowed under the metal skirting, which I was told, oh yeah, metal skirting totally keeps the rats out. It didn't do a thing to keep the rats out. So rats had burrowed under the metal skirting. They were getting into our chicken coop. They were eating the grain, and they were having a little rat party over there. And I was upset about that. Now, we live right next to the woods, like right up against our house, there's woods. And on top of that, the woods, there's rats in the woods. They get into the grain from the chicken feed. That creates like this whole like perfect breeding ground for rats. So we were very concerned about rats, and we called a Terminator. Like, we had a regular pest guy, and he was like, yeah, I really can't do much about rats. So we called a Terminator, like, hey, rats are a problem. Like, we thought we had a rat-proof chicken coop. I talked to the Terminator. Apparently, there is no such thing as a rat-proof chicken coop. And actually, according to him, we were doing pretty well at preventing rat infestation, but it still happens. Like, that's part of owning chickens. If you own chickens, sooner or later, you might have to deal with rats. There's only one person that I talked to about that. Only one. And I mean, I was telling her, like, I told her this is a very normal thing that happens when you own chickens, so we're taking measures to deal with it because this is part of owning chickens. This is part of life. This is a very common sense part of life. But apparently she took that information and the cats, the fact that we own cats, and the cats poop in litter boxes, and the litter boxes are on the floor, and oh my god, your baby is crawling, so he might get into the litter boxes. This is all very common sense stuff. Like, this should all be very, very straightforward common sense. If you own chickens, you gotta watch out for rats. If you have cats, they're gonna poop in litter boxes. The litter boxes are gonna be on the floor more often than not. This is all just very common sense stuff. The DCS lady, she came through our house. It's like, if you are looking for cat poop, please observe our litter box. It is right over there. If you're looking for cockroaches, here's a jar of cockroaches sitting next to the bearded dragon cage. If you're looking for rats, please observe our chicken coop. It's all just like, it's all common sense stuff. Like, we are handling our house. There is nothing crazy, unsafe, filthy in our house. Like, yes, there's the usual stains and dirts and crayon marks on the walls and normal stuff, but it's all very well within the range of normal. Like, yes, the kids draw on the walls in crayons. I wash it off when I find it, but it takes a while to find it sometimes. So yeah, occasionally there's gonna be like crayon marks on the walls or what have you. This is part of having small children. Our house is a very normal house. Hold on a minute. DCS came in, she looked around, she apologized like right away, asked us if anyone had any kind of malicious intent against us, gave us a number that we can call to report a malicious DCS report, because apparently if someone files a malicious claim against you to DCS, that is a Class E felony. And so we called the number and said that a malicious claim had been made against us. And I'm texting my friend, like, this is the craziest thing. Like, I don't know who would do this. Like, and at that point I was still, like, it had just happened, so I was still narrowing it down. I was like, okay, it was someone from the school, and it was someone who knew we had cats, which is kind of weird. So narrowing it down, narrowing it down, narrowing it down. And she, right away, she was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe someone would do that. Like, she's playing all innocent. And like, oh, how could somebody do that to you? That's just, no, that's not yours. She's like, that's so crazy, I can't believe anybody would do that to you. Well, I'll be a character reference for you guys if you need a character reference. Like, I totally do that for you guys. We're friends, but I don't know her that well. Anyway, we narrowed it down, and finally was like, okay, was it my friend? Like, did she do this? And I'm sitting there like, oh, it seems a little weird. Like, I guess it's possible she did it, but why would she do something like that? Like, she's been to our house. She's seen our house. She's seen our floors. She knows there's not cat poop crusted all over our floors, so why would she do something like that? And then, like, the very next day, I get this huge, long text message from this lady. And it goes along the lines, I really should have read it to you guys because it's kind of funny, but basically, actually, she starts off by saying that actually this whole DCS thing is a good thing. This is good for us because DCS has resources, and those resources can help us out. This is a good thing. I don't think there's any parent on the face of this planet who thinks that a DCS visit is a good thing, but she's like, oh, this is actually a good thing. Because they have resources that can help you. It's starting to click, right? There's a number you can call for everything. The government will take care of you. California. Not all Californians are like that. I've met some lovely Californians, but actually my parents lived in California for a while. Briefly. I hope I can forgive them for living in California. Anyway, there are good Californians in this world. I just don't think she was one of them. So anyway, she's got this idea that the government's just going to step in and take care of you. And all of a sudden it's starting to click into place. Like, oh, God's going to take care of me. God's going to take care of me. God's going to solve all my problems for me. Government's going to take care of me. Government's going to solve all my problems for me. I understand now. Okay, so you just called the appropriate number. And in this case, you thought it was DCS because DCS has resources for people like me, aka people who live in small houses in the country and not mansions in your rich, fancy city. Got it. Okay, I'm understanding this more and more. They have resources for people like you. Okay, I'm reading through this like, what the fuck? And then she goes on, and I don't think you should own so many pets. Okay, so just to recap, how many pets do we have? We have 4 little birds. They're budgies. They have to live together, otherwise they start to get really lonely and depressed. And so if you're keeping budgies and you want them to be healthy, you keep a small flock of them. So we have 4 little budgies. They belong to one of my daughters. She absolutely loves them. They are her entire world. We also have a lizard. I've mentioned him. And that is my other daughter's pet. And she spends all her time, she'll put him on her shirt and he'll like hook onto her shirt with his little claws and she'll walk around the house with him. And she spends as much free time as she can with this lizard. She absolutely adores him. But apparently we should get rid of those. And then we also have 3 cats. And I mean, one of these cats we've had for over a decade. They've just been with our family for ages, but we're supposed to get rid of all those. And the reason she says we need to get rid of our pets is because, number one, we don't have enough space. Forget the fact that we were planning to either move to a bigger house or have a couple rooms added onto this house. She says that's not going to fix the problem, even though she says that we don't have enough space for 3 cats, which they've been living with us for years and years and years, and it's never been a problem. But whatever. We don't have enough space for that many cats. And then on top of that, more importantly, I think, we don't have enough money for cats or bearded dragons or budgies or any of that stuff. We don't have enough money for that sort of thing. Because we don't live in a mansion in your town with all the rich fancy people. That's what you're saying, isn't it? We don't live in a mansion. And we live simple lives. And we grow our own food because that's something that I value, and my values don't align with your values. And I've been listening to this woman talk about her values and God this and God that, and I've been very patient with this lady's values all this time, but then the moment my values don't align with her values, she calls motherfucking DCS on me. And says all sorts of shit that is clearly, provably, visibly not true. Because she doesn't think we should own pets. I'm just looking at my husband after reading this, and I sent him a copy, and I just looked at it, I was like, is she really so disconnected from reality that she doesn't know how normal people live? Like, is she that fantastically wealthy that she's just lost track of what normal people's lives are like? Oh my God. And so, we start putting pieces together, and it starts making more and more sense. She called a police raid in on her next door neighbors. And she called DCS on us, and she likes calling government agencies on people. Like that's her thing. That's her hobby. That's why. Oh, do you need to watch another show? Okay, I'll be right there. Watch TV. Puppy? Puppy. You want the one with the puppy? Puppy. Okay, we'll do the one with the puppy. Yeah. This is just how she handles things. She calls up numbers of various government agencies and just sicks them on people, and she thinks that that's okay. And I guess maybe it's just a cultural thing. Maybe that's just how they do it in California. In the rest of the world, or at least in the rest of the country, if you call DCS on somebody, that's not a nice thing to do. Like, unless you legitimately have a very real concern about the well-being of their children. And if you call DCS on them, even if you do have a very real and legitimate concern about the well-being of their children, they're probably not going to like you very much after that. Like, they're probably not going to be too fond of you after doing that. Even if it was a legitimate reason. If you make a bunch of stuff up just so that DCS will show up at this person's house and give them their resources, that person might get a little not happy with you. So anyway, she's not a bright woman. She wrote me this whole big long thing basically outlining why she called DCS. For example, she doesn't believe that we should own pets because she thinks we're poor, even though we send our kids to this ridiculously expensive private school. She thinks we're poor because in her mind, having been, I don't want to give away any of her personal information because I don't want to dox this lady, because I don't believe that that's an appropriate way to handle, social media. But at the same time, this woman was clearly, ridiculously, fantastically wealthy. The kind of wealth that people fantasize and daydream about. And I could not give less of a shit up until the point that she decided I was too poor to own my own cat. At that point, I take issue. And it's not a matter of I should have your wealth and you shouldn't have your wealth or anything like that. I just take issue with you invading my life because you've been rich your entire life and you think that means that you're entitled to tell me how to live my life. So I was a little upset for a while. And it was hard to think about anything else because I was very upset. You know, we're going through... This is a thing that happens across time. Like, DCS shows up for the first visit, but then they have to do a subsequent visit because they have to actually physically see all of your children to make sure that all of them are, you know, alive. And then they had to give me instructions on how to put my baby to bed at night, because even though I was doing textbook safe sleep practices, they're still required to give you those instructions. So I had to get a lesson on how to put my baby to sleep at night, even though I was doing everything that they told me to do in the lesson. Like, stupid shit. But they're required to do this stuff every single time there's a DCS call. So then we had to call up one of our family friends and be like, hey, we need a character reference. Just, this took place over the course of several weeks. And I looked at it and thought, okay, if I see this woman in person, if I see this woman in the car line to pick up my children.
In the course of editing this video, it became clear to me that if I included the following expletive-laden rant, I would never be able to monetize this video. So let me abbreviate that by saying I might scream some very unfriendly things at her in public, which would be very cathartic but probably unwise. I don't think I would hit her, but I would really, really want to.
For the interest of all parties involved, and also for the interest of keeping my children enrolled in that school, because I think that if I attacked one of the other moms, particularly a ridiculously wealthy mom, the school might not want me sending my children there anymore. I'm just going to park at the far end of the parking lot. And I'm going to hope that this crazy bitch forgets that I was ever born and goes off and ruins some other person's life because she's had enough of mine. And, you know, I see her every once in a while, and she's just kind of strutting around like she owns everything. And no guilt, no remorse. I'm not even sure she's conscious of the fact that she's not done right by people. And I'm not just talking about me. Like, yeah, she called up a government agency. She made up lies about me so that the government would come in and check on my family. Like, that's not nice. That's very not nice. But it's also a Class E felony. Like, they're never gonna... We filed the complaint, and they said they'd look into it, but they're never gonna look into it. Like, she's never... And she's wealthy. Like, she can just call her army of lawyers to come take care of the problem. There's always a number you can call, right? And so I doubt anything's gonna come of that. But, I mean, she did this to us, and then she also called that police raid in on her neighbors. And so in the middle of the night, her neighbors have the police breaking down their door and dragging them in, you know, putting them in police cars in handcuffs, and then interviewing everyone in the apartment building. I mean, I'm sure that those neighbors would love to know who did that to them. I'm just going to walk away. Just walk away. And I was funny. I was talking with the DCS lady, because the DCS lady was nice, you know. I felt bad for her because she's trying to do her job, and she's a government employee, and she's been assigned to jump through these hoops and check off these boxes. And it's clearly very obvious that there's nothing going on wrong at our house, but she has to jump through the hoops and cross off the boxes and check all the check marks and do all the things. And so I'm talking with her. And, I mean... We were annoyed that she had to be there, but it's not her fault that she just happened to be the person that got sent out to be there. And I told her, you know, I don't believe in karma. And she's like, I believe in karma. I was like, no. I'm sorry, no. Bad things happen to good people all the time. And good things happen to bad people all the time. There is no karma. But every once in a while, somebody does enough shitty things to other people that it starts to catch up with them. So, this lady, she's been running through a couple husbands at this point, and Her family disowned her, and it probably isn't because her family are all narcissists. That's just projection, because she's not sorry for a thing she's ever done. And so she's not getting any of her family's money. And her husband divorced her, but the only thing he owes her is child support. And she had good money from the child support, but the child support is running out. And recently her husband told her she needs a job. And she told me about this. In fact, she told me about this the day that she called DCS on my family. Like right before she called DCS on my family, she told me about this. How her husband was telling her she needs to get a job. And she's telling me all about how she can't get a job. I was like, it's not that bad, actually. I worked at Walmart for a while. Like, it's really tough because if you're a stay-at-home mom, you don't have a resume. You don't have any kind of resume at all. You just have to go in and be like, hey, I have no work history at all, but here I am. Please give me a job. And it sucks because you're starting off right at the beginning again. So whatever you had before is gone. You got to start off right at the beginning. Entry-level job. It sort of sucks because no matter what you accomplished before you spent however many years as a housewife, that doesn't carry over. My job, my history of work, all that stuff, it doesn't mean a damn thing. Like my license to work as an EMT expired ages ago. So it wasn't like I could just go, get a job working in medicine. I had to go and work at a Walmart instead. This is life. It sucks. And I'm telling her this, and she's like, yeah, but you don't understand. Okay, be patient. Listen to the woman. I will listen. She's like, you don't understand. Because, for me, it's not like I'm just getting a job to get out of the house or to keep myself busy. For me, I would have to actually support myself on this. And I've never had a job in my life. And if I had to get a job, I would be competing against teenagers. And I'm sitting there like, you'll be okay. She's like, no, you don't understand. I'm like, okay. I'm listening. And she's like, every person that I've ever known who was rich, like really, really rich. And she's telling me this like it's some sort of revelation that she was rich. It's like, dude, everybody knows it. We can smell the money coming off you, okay? But she's like, every other person that I've ever known who was like really, really rich, who lost all their money, it was because of some evil that they held on to. Like something evil happened and they held on to that evil and they didn't give it up to God. And it angered God. And that's how they lost their money. And then they had to live poor because they had angered God. But I didn't do anything to anger God. And I'm sitting there listening to her like, you didn't do anything to anger God? Really? Okay, that's not how money works, but okay. I'm just listening. I'm like, okay, the girl needs to talk to somebody. Just be patient, keep an open mind. Don't say what you're thinking. Don't say what you're thinking. Like, I realize that this lady is saying basically she's too good to work a normal job like a normal person. Like, I can't work at Walmart, and I've met people. Unfortunately, through the course of sending my children to a good school so they can get a top quality education, which is a huge sacrifice on my family's part, but we're doing it because we want our kids to be happy, healthy, successful people. Unfortunately, sometimes I run into people who just, they're too good for Walmart. And they're too good for Walmart employees. They're too good for poor people. She's one of those, basically. Like, she's telling me she can't be bothered to work a normal job like a normal person because she's just too good for that. But it's not that she's too good for it. It's that she's never angered God. And I'm listening because she needs to talk to somebody, so I'm listening because that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to listen. I'm here to be a sympathetic person. I'm here to be as understanding as I possibly can. I'm here for you. You think you're too good to work at a Walmart. Okay. So I didn't say that. I was like, okay, so, and I'm trying to think of a way to say this that doesn't sound like, so basically you're saying you're too good to work at a Walmart, even though I spent a year working at a Walmart just to help my family out. Okay, you're too good for that. Got it. And so I'm like, so basically what you're saying is you think there's some better opportunity that's coming up, and you have a feeling that something better is coming your way, and so you're just holding out for that better thing. She's like, exactly. I'm like, okay, okay. And then that night she calls DCS and tells them that our house is covered in cat shit because she doesn't think we should own cats, because she knows more about how our lives are supposed to go than we do. So that was interesting. It's quiet. He finally went down for his nap. Good. He was so upset. Anyway, yeah, good. Okay, cool. I don't believe in karma, but I really hope that someday this lady actually does have to get a real job. She's never had a job before, so maybe eventually she will get a real job. Or perhaps eventually she's going to call one too many police raids in on other people, and the cops are going to clue into the fact that she's constantly calling the cops on other people, and maybe there will be some sort of negative repercussions for that. Either way, whatever happens to her in her life, I hope it happens far away from me, because that's a level of crazy I just don't want to be anywhere near. It is fascinating, though. I will say, like, that's the reason I'm sharing this story, because it was interesting. It is genuinely interesting. I learned a valuable lesson. That knee-jerk reaction of I just want to get away from this person that I get when someone's like talking about God all the time. Yeah, that's probably something I should listen to. I should not make myself ignore that deep sense of discomfort. When I feel discomfort around somebody, there's probably a legitimate reason for me to feel that, and I should no longer ignore that. Also, I should probably just listen to my husband, because he's more socially attuned than I am. And I told him, next time you get a bad feeling, just tell me you get a bad feeling. Because again, I hung out with murderers. My radar is screwed. And yeah, you know, that's one of the many reasons why I just haven't posted a video lately. There's been a lot going on. I don't think it was because she was rich. There are good rich people in this world. I don't think it was because she was Christian. I've met plenty of good Christian people in the world. I think she was just an asshole. And then as a person who writes novels as a hobby and occasionally publishes them, I look at this and I think, what a fascinating insight into the mind of a horrible person. I mean, she says all the right words. She acts super nice. I mean, you see this in movies, but writing a character like that in a way that is real is tricky. And so when you meet people like that, or at least when I meet people like that, I look at them and I'm like, what's going through your head? What's making you tick? How do you logic your way around being such a horrible, horrible person? Like, you have to believe on some level that you're a good person. Like, you have to live with yourself. You have to wake up every morning, look in the mirror. So how do you do that when you call in a police raid on your poor innocent neighbors who were just living their lives and minding their own business? Or call DCS on the friend who was trying to be sympathetic and kind to you because that was the only person you met after you moved to this town? How do you justify that? God approves of everything I've done. God is going to take care of me. God loves me for everything I've ever done. And I'm good with God, so it really doesn't matter how horrible I treat other people. Fascinating. What a fascinating human being. What a horrible person, but a fascinating human being. So that was exhausting, but if you see a person like that in a book in the future, I'm not working on a book that has anything to do with her right now, but if anybody like her ever shows up, that's where I got the inspiration, because that was an interesting interaction that I had with a very interesting person. Anyway, I hope you are all in good health. I hope you're all well. I will try to post another video before so much time has passed, and I'll see you guys then.